In this video, we're going to create the interior space for what's behind the windows. So when we have to open some of the windows up, we'll have some sort of geometry inside to give an illusion that there is an interior. These interiors are going to be very simple, and we're going to create them for the small window, the single window, and the double window. So then we can duplicate all these windows with interiors that are UV'd, as well as all the windows which are UV'd. So we don't have to do any extra work once they're duplicated. Let's save this map with a new file name, 03 Corner Store Modeling. Before we begin to extrude and create the interior, we're going to optimize our windows, meaning we need to merge some vertices and delete some unnecessary edges. We don't need to optimize the bottom half, the movable part of the window. These are good as they are. But for the main frame, there's some work to be done, such as these edges, which need to be removed, and many of these vertices need to be merged. I usually wait to optimize the mesh later in the process, but because we're going to duplicate this all around the building, we want to do it right now before duplicating to eliminate unnecessary work. So before we begin optimizing this, we need to enable preserve UVs. Otherwise, when we merge vertices, move edges, we will distort the UVs we already did. To enable preserve UVs, double click on the move tool to open up tool settings and enable preserve UVs. Now we can optimize our mesh and make adjustments without messing up our original UVs. You can also access the same function by holding down Ctrl and Shift, then right click and choose Preserve UVs. Let's begin. I'm going to come over here in the corner, select this vertex, hold V and snap it to this corner, then select them both and merge. For the middle, I'm going to take the two on each side, snap them, then merge them all, and I'm going to leave this vertex in the middle as is. And come over to the other side and do the same thing. For the vertex in the middle here, I'm going to select it and then snap it to the bottom. Then again, select overlapping vertices and merge them. Going to come over to the other side, repeat the same step. At the top, we need to remove an edge. So I'm going to select this edge and this one across here on this other side. Hold Shift, left click to add to a selection and press Ctrl Delete. There was an edge here in the middle, and that one I want to leave. I only want to delete these two edges going across, but the one in the middle we want to keep. Now all we have left are two vertices we need to snap and merge. One here at the top, and another vertice on the other side. Again, we're going to select it, hold V, left click drag to snap the vertex to the vertex in the corner, and then merge overlapping vertices. I'm going to turn off back face culling so we can see all the faces in the back better. This will also help us when we begin to create the interior. And let's take a look at our UVs to make sure they're still intact. And they are. Delete history on this object. And now we need to optimize our small and single window. So let's start with the single window and we're going to repeat exact same steps. Snap vertices together and merge overlapping vertices. We're going to do this for the bottom, for the middle of the frame, and for the top. For the top we have an edge that we're going to remove first, and then come to each corner and then snap this vertex and then merge overlapping vertices on each side. Then let's quickly repeat the steps for the small window. This is going to be identical to what we just did with the single window. Delete history on both objects and check our UVs to make sure that we didn't mess anything up. I'm going to select the bottom parts of the window and everything looks good. We are now ready to create our interior space. Let's disable preserve UVs and select the inner edges of the double window. Press Ctrl E to extrude those edges and add some thickness to it. This is how we're going to create our interior. It will be attached to our window and we'll be able to duplicate it all across our building. Switch over to vertice component mode, select the vertices, and begin to snap them to the grid so everything is more even. Then let's select the outer edges again, hold down Shift, extrude to create the interior space, And then we're going to bridge between two edges to create that extra polygon. I'm going to select one edge, hold down Shift, select the other, then hold Shift, right click, hold, and select bridge to create a face between two selected edges. We're going to delete this edge in the middle, and then grab the top vertex, snap it to a corner, do the same thing for the bottom, and then merge the overlapping vertices. We now have the interior for the double window. I'm going to raise these windows up so we can take a look inside. And let's move the back face a bit more to create further depth. And I think this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and repeat the same steps for the single window and the small window. Again, we're going to grab the outer edge, extrude, snap the edges to the grid, then extrude again to create the interior space, bridge to create a polygon between two edges, and we don't need to optimize anything like we had to for the double window. Let's raise the bottom portion up so we can take a look inside, and it looks good enough. Now let's finish up with the small window. So as you can see, using this method you could create an entire interior for the player to walk around in. Let's go ahead and check the interior space by raising up the window and taking a look from outside to see how it would look. Select all windows, and we want to delete history and freeze transformations. Then let's come back to the front double window and modify the pivot point on the main frame to be in the bottom left corner. Let's double check the pivot points for the other windows so they are in the exact same position for the main frame and the bottom half. Doing this will make it easier for us to duplicate and move the main frame and the bottom half as a single unit. And then eventually we will combine them into one single mesh. Let's quickly come back to the front double window, and we need to modify the pivot point for the duplicated bottom half to be in the exact same position as the main frame pivot point. Now our last step is to UV these interiors, so then when we duplicate them they will share the same UV space. Press 6 to go into textured view, select the windows, and press Ctrl 1 to isolate select. Let's open up UV editor, and all of our interior space geometry, its UVs, are going to be inside 0 to 1 UV space. So all we need to do is select these faces right inside the UV editor and then automatically unwrap. Then select a single UV shell from the window, get the textile density, which should be exact same value we used before, and then select all the interior space UVs and click set. Actually, these UVs will eventually be scaled down to be way smaller than the rest of the building, because we won't be able to see these up close inside. But we want to have a starting point by getting these UVs down to match the textile density we do have. Now let's combine some of these shells into one. Inside the perspective viewport, let's go choose Edge Component Mode, and then select these 4 edges. Then inside the UV editor, hold Shift, right click hold, and choose Move and Sew Edges. All the shells will now be connected along the selected edges. Let's repeat the same steps for the other 2 interiors, moving and sewing along the selected edges, then moving the entire shell off to the side. Rotate each shell so it's oriented correctly, and then we're going to grab the other shells that are the interior facing in, and we could actually delete these faces because we're not going to see them, but we'll leave them intact, and we'll just take them, rotate them for correct orientation, and line them up with the correct UV shells that they go to. Then to save on UV space, I want each of these UV shells to overlap, so I'm going to modify the pivot point, hold down D, V to snap to a bottom vertex, and then hold down V, left click drag, and snap each of these shells to overlap with the main back shell. Again, I think we could have just deleted these faces to save some polygons, but I decided to keep them. Next, we're going to move these shells next to the windows and scale them down. The textile density doesn't have to match for these interiors because they will not be seen by the player up close. And we won't be adding any detail to the interiors. It will be just a simple texture and geometry to provide interior for when the player is looking up into the open window. Let's switch back to Maya Classic Workspace. Select all the objects, delete the history, and now we are done with creating window interiors.